Two visionaries shaping the language of contemporary design. Rodman Primack, curator, creative force, and former director of Design Miami. Rudy Weissenberg, an entrepreneur, cultural catalyst, and media storyteller. Together, they are the minds behind Ago Projects, a studio, a gallery, and a movement born at the intersection of art, advocacy, and design. Their work transcends aesthetics, championing the handmade, the personal, and the purposeful. Join us as we step into their world, explore the philosophy that drives their practice, and discover how design can be both beautiful and radical, transformative. This is Beyond the Design. Well, Rodman, Rudy, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Well, take us back to the beginning. What were your earliest creative memories, and when did you first fall in love with design?
I'll jump in, I guess. I remember very clearly my parents building their house one of their houses, when I was 4 or 5. And they were setting up, models and maquettes and blueprints were coming into the houses during that time when there were blueprints. And I remember getting so excited about that. That was something that I wanted to be involved with and knew it. And from that day forward, sort of all of my drawings and everything I would do was based on a floor plan or a map. And I would kind of create interiors and houses for, the Toad from Wind in the Willows or, different characters in books. So it started.
And even for Barbie, I'm sure.
And then I wasn't allowed to play with my sister's Barbies, but I was allowed to be hired by Barbie. So I could be hired to be her decorator, her driver, or her hairdresser. But my favorite of those jobs was always being her decorator.
My maternal uncle was an architect, and he built an amazing house, or an amazing home for my maternal grandparents. And they were really proud of it. And it was something that was always part of the discussion, the house and how it flowed. And my grandmother was very much into aesthetics. And so it was so deeply ingrained to me how design can affect your life.
Right. Well, Rudy, your background is rooted in visual storytelling and media, and Rodman, yours is more curation and global design. How did your respective paths lead to a shared vision?
Well, one thing we should say, we've been together for a long time. So Rudy and I have been together for 27 years. And from the very beginning, started talking about and spending time together in design and art spaces. Like as young people, all of our free time was spent at galleries, museums, looking at buildings, doing those things. So we had not necessarily career paths together at that point, but we had such interests together.
But that's what brought us together. I think this conversation of if we had free time, it was to go to a museum. We're museum rats, we're gallery rats. We're always wanting to see more things. We travel for buildings. I remember when Bilbao was finished, the Guggenheim, we put it in our list and we're like, we need to go. We need to just figure out how to go. And we went to Spain just to see the building and no other reason. And I think to this day, we're the same. We have our bucket lists of buildings and places we want to visit purely based on design and architecture.
Right. That's fantastic. Well, was there a particular project or moment that sparked the idea of Ago Projects?
Well, we started just like you. You've lived everywhere, so have we. I don't think we've expanded the globe to that degree, but we moved weirdly, not by design, but every 4 to 5 years we moved and we would make homes. And for us, how we live is very important. And I think that's what started the conversation. From the first day that we met is how we wanted to live and how we wanted to surround ourselves with things that we consider important, seductive, interesting, beautiful, thought-provoking. And I think
and there was
our life together is really what connected it. And then about 5 years ago, I went back to school to do art in public space. 6 years ago. I'm
not supposed to contradict you, but that was like 7 or 8
years ago. 7 years ago.
We have been in Mexico.
Time flies.
So I went back to school 7 years ago to do art in public space. And after I graduated, and Rodman had spent 5 years at Design Miami, incredible contemporary collectible design fair, we decided it was time for us to try to do something together. So we moved to Mexico. We started a collectible design gallery, a design gallery focusing on the global South. And alongside, I started working with Rodman in his interiors practice.
And wildly, I have this experience with Design Miami, and I know all those gallerists and have seen how hard it is to do their jobs and to have a design gallery. And yet we still thought it was a good idea to do it. We still were so enthusiastic about it that we wanted to go there. And Mexico was always a big part of our lives growing up as children for different reasons. But both of our families had these connections with Mexico. Our early parts of our careers, me when I was at Christie's, Rudy when he was at Univision, brought us constantly to Mexico City, very often together and at the same time. And
Rodman's parents lived in Mexico in the 80s.
In the
70s. In my family, Mexico City was always this cosmopolitan city to the north. I mean, it was the closest thing to this metropolis that captivated their spirit. And they would come all the time for dinner theater, and they would come shopping, and they would come to eat, because Mexico has always had an amazing culinary scene.
True.
And I think when we thought about the move, we had wanted to be in Mexico for decades.
Like all of those 4 to 5, 6 year, movements, every time it would be like, oh, is it time to go to Mexico? Can we go to Mexico now? And then about 6 years ago, we really realized it was going to be now or never. It was just like the right moment to do it. And we also connected with a number of designers that were working here. And we were so excited about what they were making, what they were designing and making in Mexico, whether they were Mexican or international. The feeling of what was happening here was so exciting that I think we just thought, okay, this is it. This is the moment to do it. And it coincided with a project that we were working on with Tatiana Bilbao, the great architect here. And then she found a space, and then things just kind of like come together. And then suddenly you're rolling down a hill at 100 miles per hour, and you have a gallery and an apartment, and you live in Mexico City.
It just kind of happened.
It just happened. Like, it just happens. It's like, it's like the universe lines up all of these doors, and then they suddenly open and you go through them. And then, like, very easily, all of that happened like in a day. We decided we were coming. We got the gallery, we got the apartment. Everything happened in one day. And then, like, the next day, it started getting really complicated, and all the work and kind of the shit hit the fan, and we had to do it.
Right. I can imagine. I mean, Mexico is on my list of potentially next places I want to move to. And like you, I'm like, is it now? Is it now? Do I wait? Is it now? How did a go? Just do it now. How did the name Go come to be? What's its meaning?
I started while I was working in television. I started doing curation of design. It was a great passion of mine. And my grandparents had started a company a long time ago, which was a sawmill in Guatemala, which was called Guatemala Sawmill, Aserradero Guatemala, so the AG. And my grandparents' last name, after my uncle died, the last name went away, which was Ose, O-S-S-A-Y-E. So I call it AG Ose, and it just seemed too long. So I started calling my little project Ago. But also, funny enough, in Spanish, Ago is to do, to make. So it felt like it really worked. And that's how it started. I mean, it was kind of serendipitous and without giving it too much thought, because I was doing little projects here and there on my spare time. Just like every moment of our spare time, we would go to museums and galleries. Then I started doing on my spare time design curation.
Well, Go is more than a design practice. It's a philosophy. How do you define the spirit of Go projects?
It's so rooted in hand making, both in terms of what we're excited about, I think, from the gallery perspective, and how contemporary designers can still use all the technology and yet ultimately make things by hand. And on the interior side, being able to bring so much handwork into people's lives, we feel like it really has an energy and a product, it has an energy, and it has a...
I see it like as an amplification of the creative process, of the true creative process. Like when we feel we're being successful is when we meet a ceramicist, an artist, a textile maker, and we can work together to give them a project in scale that they had not done, to support or fund part of what they wanted to research and develop. And so it's having those conversations and augmenting them and then putting them out in the world that we focus on, which is we really love working with makers.
I think there's this thing that we both recognize, that there's only so much capital. Like, so if we get in a design project, there's a budget. There's so much capital available to do anything with it. And it's like, okay, well, we could spend that money ordering fabric from, a wonderful fabric house in Paris, blah, blah, blah. But what if we actually took that money and we ordered that fabric from someone that's able to weave it for us in Oaxaca
or start stamping something new in India? Or how do we support smaller studios? And that's part of it.
And how can that be transformational to that practice? And how could and it's both. Then the client gets something that's super special for them, and this maker has the opportunity to do something maybe that they weren't able to do, or it allows them to, get a loom.
For example, we're working with this incredible ceramicist in LA, and we're commissioning their first room. It's a whole entire bathroom that they're doing a ceramic piece for. And I don't think they've ever done something on this scale. And it's complicated, and it's going to take them a while to kind of develop the process and the hanging mechanism and whatnot. But it's so exciting to be able to do that, and to get our clients excited to do that, and to have that conversation with makers. Because a lot of clients come and they don't realize how rewarding it can be to have these conversations, to make it very personal and profound.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. Ago operates, you have the best of both worlds between Mexico City and New York, two vastly different but equally rich cultural ecosystems. How do these places influence your work and the projects that you have all over?
I think with that, everything informs what we do. We're also traveling all the time, and that informs everything we do. I think that Mexico has sort of solidified our passion for, like Rodman said, all these crafts, and getting very close to smaller ateliers making things. And New York is just the most incredible resource of information, as you know. There's no other place where you can visit from the gallery to the museum, because that's, also very important to understand where it all comes from, to finding what's trending, right? Like New York has that pulse that you always see what's coming up, and these young galleries. There was an article that I read the other day of like the young design galleries. There's a lot of them, and there's a lot of people with great ideas that are being executed. And I think New York gives you that, is that sort of like shot in the vein of design and art, and in a very fast pace.
And I would add the thing about Mexico that I think is sort of in the background of everything we do as well, is, as Rudy mentioned earlier, he grew up with these grandparents that had built this really interesting modernist house. My grandparents also built this really interesting modernist house. So I think the language of modernism, even when we're doing something that looks really traditional, there's something behind it in the kind of structure of modernism. And Mexico City is probably, to me, the place in the world where we get to interact with really incredible modernist architecture all the time, whether it's Barragán or Artigas or, one of these people. We're surrounded by all these incredible
We live in a perfect modernist building from 1950, from 48 to 52. And it's international style, which, modernism is heavily criticized, but at the same time, it's just so perfect and intuitive and clean. And then we tend to clutter the clean.
but the structure, that kind of modern, the way that modern buildings, mid-century buildings are organized, the way that they work, and the rationalism in that organization kind of underpins everything we do. Even when we're
minimalists because we have minimal space to have new things.
What part of Mexico City is it in the?
At Las Lomas, as the mountain starts going up, the bedrock. That's where the building was built. And the architect, Augusto Álvarez, built Torre Latinoamericana, Latin American Tower, which is at the sort of end of, as you enter downtown Mexico. And it was the tallest tower in the Southern Hemisphere until 1976. What is it? No, that's Global South.
In the Global South.
It's not the Southern Hemisphere, the Global South.
And it's the bougiest neighborhood in town, but it's not why we live there. It's not, we didn't choose it for the neighborhood. We really chose it for the building. Because we'd known the building for 25 years and wanted to live in it. Yeah. And that same day, we also got the apartment in that building.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, let me know when there's opening. That would be a deciding factor of me coming down. Well, you two have been connected for quite some time. How would you describe your creative dynamic, and who leads what and where do your roles intersect and diverge?
Well, definitely, we have skill sets. We have better skill sets. Rudy will tell you that I am terrible at certain things, and he reminds me that I'm terrible at those things, and I have to just accept that, and it's true. I definitely, I think, am more engaged in ways with certain aspects of the design process that are like pattern and color and
layering.
And
Rodman is incredible with color and the layers and layers and layers of things that he can put together in a way that I just don't see it that way. And then I love what he's creating as a story. I'm very much, because of my background in media, a project manager, and I'm about time and getting things done. And Rodman is a creative through and through. That sometimes he goes out and I need to pull him back and rein him in and say, we have a delivery date.
And Rudy's also really...
So you're well balanced with each other.
And Rudy's really good as well, I think, at thinking about how things function. I am guilty of sometimes thinking that if something's really beautiful, it functions. Like like that chair is so beautiful, it's comfortable to me. It's not in reality, or it's not to.
Whereas for me, I really
90% of the world. And Rudy's very good at looking at
experience.
Let's be realistic. This is not a comfortable chair, and no one except you thinks this is a comfortable chair.
It's interesting when you talk to people when they design houses and you question and you prod why. Because for me, it's very interesting. I think that we do might seem just like a surface thing where we just put a layer of things, and we get involved from the beginning with architects. In a perfect world, we start with a piece of land, and a lot of what we do alongside the architects is really prod the commissioning entity that people are going to live there. Is why you want to do what you want to do. Like so many people are now bombarded with images that they think is what they want, and it's not how they live. So if you can actually match who they are and how they live, I think it's a much more successful building and execution.
A big part of our job, I think, has become kind of dissecting what is aspirational versus like what is reality. And a little bit of aspiration is important to any project, but the real reality of like, are you really a cook? Do you really need to have this mega kitchen?
Or two kitchens.
Or blah, blah, or not. And like being comfortable as a client and as a firm helping them and as a team helping them to say, you know what, you're not a big cook and you're not a big entertainer. Let's not create this whole stage set for something that actually doesn't exist.
Because you're going to be in the corner of your office the whole time reading. And if that's the case,
let's focus on your office.
Your office should be a jewel box. It should be the place where you feel the most comfortable. And so those are a lot of conversations, which are super exciting. And then, of course, you get challenges from people. And it's like a puzzle that you need to solve. And it's really exciting.
What do you two admire most about one another as creatives, but also as people?
I'll go first. I admire so much that Rudy questions kind of everything. He'll look at something and immediately have a number of questions to ask about it. And I'm always sort of surprised because my brain hasn't gone there. I'm not asking any of those questions. So I love that. And I really appreciate his ability to kind of synthesize something into something simpler rather than making it more complicated, how to get it and make it simpler.
Execution is important for me. And I think Rodman has incredible patience with me and with people. And I think that's an amazing thing. But also Rodman's sense of taking the historical, screwing it up, making it contemporary, and then add layers to it, and all seeming so simple is really sort of beautiful and very, very personal.
That's nice. Do you tell each other that all the time?
No, we should probably. We'll probably have to go back and replay this to each other every once in a while.
But I think it's interesting. Like
this is your therapy session.
No, are we sending you a check?
We have done this exercise where we'll go around an art exhibition and purposely we'll go different directions and we'll meet and we're like, okay, what's your favorite painting? And most of the time it'll be the same painting. Yeah. We go to a design exhibition and most of the time it'll be the same piece. It'll be the same designer, the same artist. Or we'll be captivated by this very specific moment that we both kind of are interested in.
Or a detail of something that
I'm also very detail oriented. So if we go into a tchotchke shop with a lot of vintage stuff. Like Raman's like overwhelmed because he takes it all in. And I'm actually like a squirrel, and I'll be like, oh my God, look at this in the back. And he's like, how did you even see that? Because I'm just like, I can have that hyper focus on finding things.
I mean, we have very different brains. I have a super ADD, ADHD, like terrible, like I'm 100 miles per hour at 100 different directions at the same time. And Rudy can be very focused and very, very clear.
We work in an open plan office. If I'm working, I don't even notice that people are talking next to me. Whereas Rodman hears it.
I'm having like 5 conversations at the same time. I can hear, someone on the phone and they're telling the tile people the wrong thing. And I'm like, no, blue. But I'm still,
And for me, I don't even notice there's people around me.
I get both. Believe me, I get both. Tell us a little bit about some of your current projects.
We're working on some exciting things. We're working on a house. Well, we'll talk about a couple of them, but we're working with an amazing couple from San Francisco, and we're working on their house in Hawaii. And this is a young couple that came to us. And what's really exciting is that at the beginning, they were kind of, and I'm sure this happened to you before, where people are a little insecure and they think that they don't know anything. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of tap into this energy and they realize that they have so many instincts and they know exactly what they want. They just needed someone to kind of help them synthesize it. And so we're starting to develop the shorthand with them. Now they know design periods. And, the husband called us and told us he likes Gio Ponti from the 40s and not 50s and 60s. And I almost cried of happiness. And so we're building this very beautiful, very human scale home in Hawaii with Walker Warner from San Francisco, who's such a beautiful architect.
Very thoughtful.
So thoughtful and so about process. And to see that, he's very much about working on a grid, and the grid repeats itself, and it's very all sort of super planned, and it's very beautiful as a canvas for our chaos. So that's really exciting.
And then we're working on 2 projects for 2 different clients with Tom Kundig, an architect that we've worked with for the last 18 years, kind of repeatedly all over.
Out of Seattle.
And for one family, this is, I think, our 4th project with Tom Kundig and the family. And that is always like such a gift to be able to keep coming back to the same team and work together and in different places. It's not just like, we just keep making a new apartment in New York City. We keep going to new places and do new things and tell new stories. And that is really, really fun. And then we're working with Tom with a new client for us on a project in Cabo. And that's super exciting to bring, again, this years and years of relationship of working. We've never worked together in Mexico. I think this is only the 2nd or 3rd project that Tom has done in Mexico. So Mexico's still like a new frontier for him. And that's so fun because it's like everything's new about it.
And we push
the materiality is new.
Yeah.
The way of thinking about it, the environment. Cabo has a really specific client, and how we're responding to that with a Tom Kundig house is very different than we would in Hawaii or somewhere else. And that's really...
You touched upon like climate is so interesting when we talk about design, because so many people bring the Pinterest board of the house they want. And, they want an English country house in a hot environment. And you explain to them why it doesn't work.
Right.
Well, there's a reason why vernacular exists. And so that's the nerdy part of ours that we love to get into, the research and understanding why things naturally started developing in the way that they did, which is usually correct, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why you have buildings with deep eaves to keep out the sunlight. And
we lived in London for quite a while, and we're doing our first English country house, and it's so exciting.
That's really fun
because the English countryside is so beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's phenomenally green. People don't know how green it is until they've experienced it, and just the lushness
and you understand their obsession with gardens, right? Once you see English,
and it also means that the palette is totally different. There's as you're saying, there's so much green that reflection, the light is really green, either green or kind of this gray blue in the winter, and that's a really specific kind of parameter to work around, and it's fun to be sitting in Mexico City and be thinking about what's happening in the Cotswolds and how that's going to...
Right. A little different.
Yeah.
Well, collaboration is a key aspect in this field and in the design industry. How do you approach curating a collection or a space so it tells a compelling story, especially when you're working with other creatives on a single project?
I think the first thing we come in with is an open energy, if that makes any sense. I think that some people like to work with friction, and that doesn't work for us. Like, we really like to make teams with people. It's like we want to make sure that we're aligned in what we're trying to accomplish. And that's not saying that we're not going to push back on things, right? Like, we usually want to make things slightly quirky. Like, when things are slightly off is when we think they're perfect. And that's what we look for. Idiosyncrasies in design. And so we really, I think it takes time to kind of look at mood boards and periods. And
I think you're trying to find as well a really true connection with the client and what the client's really interested in. You know, so much of our work is based in collecting, and being able to build a collection together with a client. Like, the ideal is that when you're done with, let's say, the project, the client is still looking at auction or catalogs and sending you something saying like, oh, don't you think we should get this to replace that? This Tenrero chair is coming up. We always wanted it. Didn't we always want it? Like, 5 years later, you still want that passion to be with the client and with us. And so I think we're looking for and hoping to find an adventure to go on together, right? And, like, that we all can get really excited about going on a trip to see stuff, and then, getting excited about the gallerists and the auctions. And we're hoping that that's something that's not just about, like, designing and decorating this one project, but it's gotten into their psyche in the way that it is in ours.
I think it's what you said is storytelling. Like, Rodman and I love thinking about that, right? We've even done curation projects where we think about fictional characters and how they affect what you do. Like, even the house that Rodman worked on, the whole idea, it was all made up, but it was like, oh, you had an Italian stepfather that brought all this furniture to the US. He died and you inherited these things, and it turns out that they're great. And how do you incorporate it to a super American home? And I think that juxtaposition, that clash, is something that we love. And so it's all about storytelling.
And it was this kind of fun way of creating, like, you're creating the kind of contrived environment, but it feels supernatural in the end when you connect with that story, and that's the story that you're going to tell together. It becomes a real.
And true collectors are not collectors; they're hoarders. They're like obsessives. They're obsessives. Because sadly, that's like it's almost like once you start looking at something, and it could be anything, right? Like, we've heard about stamps or rocks or whatever it is that you start accumulating. When you get more than one and you're interested in having more than 10, something is triggered that it's something that all of a sudden sparks and you want to know more about. It's about interest, right? And this kind of obsessiveness, knowing more. And, like, we can't afford a lot of the things that we love, we can't afford. And
but luckily we have clients that can afford them. So what we can't get, they can get it.
But it's about research, and there are things that we can get obsessed about that we could, start acquiring, like humble ceramics from Romania that we have some, like. Then
we were just in Santa Fe this last weekend for this international folk art market, which is this incredible craft and folk art fair in Santa Fe. And we collect textiles. I've been collecting textiles since I was a teenager. I still, I salivate, I sweat, my palm, I can feel this anxiety about having to get these textiles. I do not need them. I do not need another single piece of fabric in my life. I cannot control it. I can't stop.
One of our favorite clients is this lady that we've learned so much from, not just about collecting, but also about being a fair and elegant person. And we went down to Colombia together to go to this market for craft. And we walk in and she said to me, I feel terrible. And I said, what's going on? She's like, I feel gluttony, and that's a sin. I want it all. She's like, every basket I see, I just want to take it and live with it.
Love it.
And it's that trigger when you see something and you're so in awe that this can be made and executed.
Someone can make
and they have the brains. It's like, in Guatemala that we still have it's very much alive, this textile tradition. And a lot of it is women, mostly with the backstrap loom. And it turns out that their brain works very similarly to computer coding brains because it's about yes and no, up and down, right? And so when you start making those connections and how it all sort of comes together, you realize that a tech bro would totally get why if you explain to them this textile is important for them to have. And I think once you open the door, it clicks.
Well, you've spoken about creating places of experiential environments. What does that mean to each of you?
I think it's so important to feel like you are in a place. I think when you go somewhere, when you go somewhere, I think you want to feel you're in that place profoundly, so that the objects you're touching and the things you're looking at are of that place.
Like in hospitality, when hotels are like the place, it's so much more incredible. But for you, what is the experience? For me, home is really about taking a deep breath and safety, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So being able to walk into a space that you feel reflects who you are, and you can actually just be in there in a safe environment, I think is very important.
I just always am wanting to feel that the objects and the things that I'm looking at were really made with intention. And I really respond to that sense of intentionality, whether the intention is to be like on an adventure and be doing something that is atypical or something that is more typical. It doesn't, one is not better than the other for me, but what is better, one thing that's better than the other is actually understanding and knowing that there was a real specific intentionality around that thing. And it gives me such a feeling, and I think other people feel that too, that you feel like, oh, this is something very special. And it's not just, manufactured. You're actually having a real experience in a real space that someone has taken time and thought. It's like, eating when it's extraordinary.
Right. Well, the words relaxed, maximalism, and punk take on prep have been used to describe your aesthetic, which are two opposites. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think it's totally the punk take on preppy resonates so much for me because when I was a kid, there was a book called the Preppy Handbook. A lot of people of our generation had that book, and a lot of people understood it to be a parody. My sister and I had that book and did not understand it to be a parody, and we thought that it was something that was meant to be like a guide to live our lives. And so, as very young children, we were modeling ourselves into these perfect preps. But on the other side, we grew up surrounded by surf culture and skateboard culture and kind of punk music in Southern California and those things. And I loved all of those things. So the idea that this like very preppy person also kind of has this prep idea, which I think, or this punk idea, it's like breaking through this wall of mattress plaid and realizing that a ton of mismatched mattress becomes something punk. That's exactly where we live.
And I think that we were raised by very formal grandparents. Like our maternal grandmothers are very important for both of us. And they were slightly formal and a little uptight in the way that we were supposed to behave and how you eat at the table and all these things and manners and whatnot. And even discussions, it was really, I think, dictated by age and respect and all these things. And we'd like to turn it a little bit on its head, like not to be as formal. I think the world is less formal. I think that ideas and the way people has access to information, the 12-year-old has very interesting opinions, and I think they should be heard also. And so I think is that leveling all of it, where it's like very welcoming and safe. Again, I use the word safe, but it's a safe environment to exchange.
But we are like two old ladies, and the fact that we are attracted to like kids with nice manners and like stuff like that's so nice. The structure, that kind of structure of a balanced civic society, civil society, is something that I think benefits all of us. And then I think when you understand those structures and commit to those structures, when you break through and you allow for the eruptions of artistry and convulsions of music and things that rupture that, it's amazing and it feels wonderful. But understanding that there's this kind of like base level of moving through the world in a way. And then you have these kind of moments of renegade.
I think when you spend a lot of time looking at contemporary art, contemporary design, you realize that breaking taboos is a big part of art, right? And it has been forever. Like it's really pushing the boundaries. It not only reflects the current time, but it also goes against it and explodes things. And I think so. There's very little that shocks you in a way. Like you've seen a lot of things. It's like, Upper East Side ladies that went to see Mapplethorpe's photographs and they were shocked by them, but would buy them and love them in their living room. And it became almost like you start understanding more about sexuality and race and all these things, those conversations that are so important. I think that's prodded in and by the art world, and sometimes very successfully. And I think that's part of the punk is like you throw in something in there that really stimulates thought and makes people slightly uncomfortable. And I think that's great.
Like anything that's just too pretty is boring. Like, things become really beautiful when there's a mixture of pretty and ugly together. There's such an energy between those two things. And they actually, I think, result in something beautiful. Like even when you think about some models, like some models are not pretty. They're beautiful. It's like a different thing. We had a Salvadorian artist that we love, really works with words and colloquialism. And we had a huge mural in our home that said super puta, super whore. But it's like the way that people speak in El Salvador. And my nieces and nephews, when they were very young, they would laugh and they would come take pictures and whatnot. But we started having these conversations, like, right? Like, what does that mean? Why do you use that language? Like, why are we so, in America, we tend to be super, super naughty when we speak. It's like a lot of double entendre and all these things. And it's like, well, let's stop and think why and why is it allowed? And when is it okay and not to do so? So they always found it hilarious. But then we started talking about art. And then they asked, well, why is that art? And who decides that that's art? And it was an entry point for all the young kids in my family. And it was just really fun.
Well, you got to shake it up a little bit. Little. Startle them and, be shocking.
And it started a revolution of design.
Exactly. Well, you said you wanted to be you want to design to be an agent of change. If I got that right. What are some of the most meaningful projects or moments where you've seen that actually come to life? And how do you incorporate that into your work?
I think about something super simple like our friend Irma, who is a woman in the highlands of Guatemala who does embroidery with us. And not just with us, but we've introduced her to lots of our friends that also do projects. And we're always hopeful that she'll get more projects. But we've really been able to see that by doing that work with her, she's been able to educate her children, her sister's children, who she ended up adopting. And she's actually been able to create a really stable home and environment for that family. And it's not like hasn't created some sort of global difference, but it's created a really major difference just in her life and in her small village.
And I think also the change is appreciation and sort of leveling the sort of made up market created value of art versus design versus craft versus textiles, right? Like we want to bring forth a conversation that is admiring what people do and that respect that should be the same for everyone. Right. So I think and you've done this as an architect, like everyone is an integral part of these projects, right? Without one person doing a good job, the whole thing falls apart. And I think that's what we want to do is breaking the barriers between the expectation of what's expensive and what isn't and what's good and bad.
I think we're both so committed to kind of breaking down this idea of looking at things through like a luxury or a branded luxury lens where something is good and nice because it's expensive and there's advertising behind it and blah, 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 and getting to a place where it's like, well, no, this is actually really good because look at how beautiful the stitching is. Look at how beautiful this is and this part and this whole process to make this thing is beautiful, whether it came in, an orange box or it came wrapped in, a piece of, like mate paper. There's something intrinsic.
And houses that we love. We were in George O'Keeffe's house for the first time over the weekend. Well, my first time,
not my first time.
And it's just perfect to me, right? And it's because she worked and collected and mixed all these things that are so enticing and beautiful, and you want to touch. Like, I would just love to sit in her living room, which you can't. But she also had a modernist table that she, kind of pimped differently because she wanted to change it a little bit. And there's a permanence to that conversation, right? To just collecting rocks and putting them on top.
And there's a confidence in just having objects that you love, regardless of what other people are telling you.
The rocks from your construction site that are beautiful. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not all about just spending.
Well, true. And it comes down to, as you mentioned, the price and luxury, and what does luxury mean? And is it art? And is it, so how do you balance the tension between art and commerce, between beauty and activism?
I think nowadays it's so difficult because the market is such a dictating factor, right? Like, things have gotten really expensive as you've seen, right? Like, the Lalande market, these incredible designers from France, sadly both deceased, but their sculptures are now $15 million in a bar. It's hard because, very few people can do that. But what we do is kind of look at other things that are happening that we think are worth supporting at a different moment in time. So either things that are overlooked, or young designers that haven't been supported, or things that are simply not as expensive, dictated by the market, are things that we look at. When it comes to art, it really depends. Like, our favorite art collections are the ones that mixed a lot of things, like the Yves Saint Laurent collection, which was phenomenal, of an important painting next to something that wasn't considered by the market so expensive. But together, they're just so poetic.
And I would say that there's, that this idea of activism, I wish I could say that, we're so focused on green solutions and everything, but it's just not always possible to do that. But I think that, I think one of the things, and what Rudy's expressing as well, is that just by trying to shift focus onto the making and the location of where something's been made and how it's been made is in itself activism with a little a, not a big A, but just being intentional about
from our little
how
corner,
you're sourcing,
exactly,
from whom, and
like with stone, we always ask, what's the closest quarry? Like, what does this local stone look like, and can we work with it? Because it just makes it easier.
What are the appliances? Like what are made? We've done this exercise a lot before. It's like, well, a client will be like, oh, I want an aga. And you're like, okay, great. You want an aga, but like, actually, like, what's actually, is there a fabricator or a maker closer to us that would accomplish something similar, and that's not being shipped from the UK, and not and is, like, those kind of small, I think those are small things that you can do, but they do make a difference.
I spent a lot of time in
a bigger impact.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in the countryside in Guatemala, and Rodman grew up in Sun Valley, Idaho, a lot of time in the mountains. And I think that connection to nature for us is super important because we both had it growing up, which is an incredible privilege to have been able to be in places where the temperature, the season, the happenings really informed sort of like very simple things, like organic things like plants and water and whatnot, that were just so important to consider.
I think trying to bring that sensibility and that consciousness to building and making things, I think, helps us connect with the planet. We're all here hoping to.
And I don't know if we thought about this, but as we get older, we realize that we're not collectors. We're just keepers of things in the meantime while they go to someone else, hopefully. So it starts changing your perception. The perception is like, what are the things that you want to have custody of for a little bit until they go on to the next person? And what is that going to look like? And is someone else going to enjoy it? And so, like, if you create a beautiful collection of fabrics, will that go to someone else? Are you going to give it to someone in your family? Can they go to an institution?
I mean, we're so anti-wasters. Like we really
going back to the hoarding thing.
not just that, but I think I think we look at these things as really long-term propositions, and the hope and the desire is like you make a choice that is going to last a really, really long time. Like buying something or making something that's going to last 20, 30, 40 years rather than something that's disposable. And
just, throw away. Yeah.
Like, throwaway is really not good for any of us at any level, whatever we apply that look at is it's just not good.
No, it's not. And I think today's society is so driven by, I need it now, I have to have it, not thinking of, well, how long is it going to last me? Do I pay $2 extra to last 10 years versus, it lasting a year and just, I can just buy another one. It's like, there's a cause and effect.
Or God forbid you had
see that.
God forbid you had to wait an extra month for the thing that will make you happier, right?
Yeah, true. Very true. Well, what does a typical day, if there's such a thing, at a go look like, or is there such a as it go type day? Let's walk in and see where it goes.
Well, we travel a lot, so that like throws it in a wrench because it depends if we're traveling. But if we're sort of here or New York, I think we start the day very differently. Rodman tends to be calmer as he starts picking up. I jump right into it. I try to do like a 5-minute meditation because I tell myself it's the only way that I'm going to calm myself.
Well, I wake up hours before Rudy. I'm up and like exercising and walking the dog and like sort of, I have this very long, like 3-hour entry.
I'm a big believer in 8 hours of sleep, at least 7.5.
And then we really get into the office, and there's so many different projects and different things happening every day. But I think we both feel that it's really important to be in the office and to have spend time with the teams and spend time.
I make lists of the major points that I need to cover in that day. As you know, like the Zooming thing is getting out of control. Mm-hmm. So that takes a lot of time. And, interestingly, someone gave us this advice. When you do all these Zooms, why don't you schedule them for half hour rather than an hour to take less time? And, interestingly, in business, if you do the half hours, sometimes if you schedule it very well, you can get the same accomplished. So that's been great feedback. If not, you only have 8 Zooms a day and that consumes your day, and you need to have time for the creative process. I need to have unscheduled time to touch base with everyone on how it's going and solve problems. So I'm very good at not being overscheduled. Whereas Rodman loves to be.
I am someone that would be very happy with a 15-minute meeting every 15-minute meeting every 15 minutes for like the entire day. That's about my attention span. And
are you telling me to wrap up, Rodman?
No. But I do know myself. Oh, wait, now that's Chapo, our dog, coming into the frame. I'm gonna pull him around. I need also sort of time to just look at stuff. I've got to look at images and books. Books are a major part of our practice. We've been collecting books. Both of us have been collecting books since we were kids, and the books are everywhere. And it's the way that my brain definitely works. I think of something and I can remember where it is in a book and where that book is on the bookshelf. So that's how I access it.
It's kind of obvious that we're both very visual, but I find that nowadays we get bombarded we see so many more images and so much more information that humans ever did, that I'm trying to start filing things, if that makes sense. Like even in my Instagram, I have folders. Like in my web browser, I have folders, because now we see so many things that you're like, oh my God, where did I see that and how do I find it? But cataloging has become very important for us, and that goes through the books. But we're like super intense workers with everyone here. We just go all day. And there's a lot of collaboration with all of the people that we work together with. They're constant banter and talking about resolving things creatively.
Because there's all the interior stuff we're working on, and then we're working on
the gallery
exhibitions for the gallery.
And the gallery's like you're planning 2 years out, and the difference between a design gallery and an art gallery. And then a design gallery, and especially with younger designers, we get very involved in the development of collections of shows and of the actual pieces.
How do you manage? I mean, two separate entities, but also separate teams in two different locations. How do you balance that?
Or do we?
Yeah. That's the secret. We don't.
I mean, I think it's a lot of work, and it's as we're growing slowly, it's really, and that's what I like to do, is really processing. Start thinking about how do we make sure that everyone's aware of what we're doing? How do we like to do things so that we can grow and everyone's getting what they want? And the most important thing that I always tell people that work with us is what you need to do is feel safe at work all the time.
Right.
How do we achieve that? How do you feel you're giving your best in a safe environment at all times? And it's a lot of talking and discussing.
What is a piece or a project you've worked on that felt particularly personal or vulnerable to you both?
I would say that what comes to me immediately is a project that we recently completed in Ojai, which was a house that we did for a client that was my first interior design client. And now 20 years later, or 18 years later, I was doing a sort of what they consider maybe to be their final house. And, California is always in my mind and in my background, and to be invited to do this project with them in Ojai, just like kind of a thesis on Californianism. That whole project.
Is that a word?
I don't know. I could have made it up, but that every moment of that house and the intensity of that relationship. They're such good friends of ours. They grew. One of the husband grew up next door to my mother. It's like such an intense relationship.
They're like family.
It's a family relationship, really, and also just a way of synthesizing. For them, they're also Californians, and us. It was like this way of kind of creating like an ode to California and what we love most about this place and about each other. And it really, everything about that project felt like it was from my heart and theirs. And I really loved that.
I think both Rodman and I have a hard time taking in things that we find that were successful, because I think we both feel that if you just focus on that, your ego is going to grow. And then how do you move forward? But we were asked by Philo Monticelli, one of the finest imprints of design books, to make a book, which was launched in November. And it took us 2 years, but it was a crazy mirror to who we are and what we do. And it was very difficult because it's time consuming and
you have to edit.
And you have to edit. And,
right.
And in our case, we wanted to make it deeply personal, just like telling a story. Again, back to the storytelling, that it wasn't just about, oh, this is what you do, this is how you hack a sofa, and that's it. It was more like, who are we? And I don't think we had ever taken the time, because we were always rushing. We had never really kind of discussed what our ethos is, and especially moving forward. And how to move forward.
Or self-reflective, standing outside yourself.
Without being totally self-indulgent, because neither one of us likes to do that. Because it just feels like you're wasting time to just pat your own back. It's more like, okay, this is what we've done. How do we move forward? And so we launched a book last October, and it's been a success, apparently.
That's great.
That's what we're told. And it's been really humbling. Because we're just grateful. We have enormous gratitude of being able to do what we do. It's privilege. And we don't take it for granted that you're able to talk to someone about how they want to live. And we're part of that conversation. And it's, high level. And it's people that have more income than most. And so you recognize that it comes with, it's so interesting to be able to do this, especially as people.
Well, you affect their lives, you affect their environment, and it's very personable. So not many people get to do that unless you're a doctor or a therapist or,
the ceramicists in LA that are going to do this bathroom that we were talking about, they lost their home in the fires in Altadena. One of them, there are two people working together. And for us to be able to do a commission of this scale, and it's a big number. I don't think we've talked about it, and we're not doing it because of that, but we know that we're helping them rebuild what they lost. And it's just, I feel lucky that I'm able to direct capital hit their way in an indirect way.
If your partnership were a piece of furniture, what would it be and why?
That's a hard one.
I would say it's like a big sotsas, like, like one of the big, the sotsas bookshelves, because it's slightly chaotic. There's lots of different pattern. There's a lot of different angles. It's all kind of like, but yet it all somehow comes together in this cohesive sense of something. And
I would say a Nakashima desk, because they seem so simple and modernist from far away. And then you realize it has life edges and imperfections and these beautiful butterflies put in. And so it accomplishes both. It's kind of like very simple, but very complex.
And those two pieces of furniture would exist together in a room that we would do. So that's
they would. Punk prep.
Exactly. Thank you.
Well, we've talked about storytelling. If design is storytelling, what story are you most proud to have told?
What story? The question is, what story
are we most proud?
Yeah, if design is storytelling,
I think our story.
What story?
Ours, like our story. I think our story of
So buy the book.
Yeah, exactly. there's a link at the end of this too.
No, I know where you're going with this. It's like, we're two kids from very different backgrounds that are just happy to be at the party, and we're starting to get traction with what we do.
And I think our story, which is about, I really think about going deep into what really drives you and what you really love, and finding love in objects and spaces. That's something that we can all do at all different levels. Like you can bring that desire to caretake yourself and those around you through design to every aspect of your life. Like making those choices and thinking about that. If you have the privilege to make one choice or another, that already is a huge thing.
And show up if you can show up as yourself and people hire you for who you are. Like when we were kids, the world was very different. Like a gay couple wasn't participant in most things, right? Like the world has moved, and just being able to show up as who we are and be very honest in what we like and what we do, and hopefully people will connect to that. And through that, to have support and help others, younger generations, and stimulate conversation.
And have built community through that.
I think community is, it's kind of like true radical acceptance. It doesn't matter. Everyone's accepted. And let's talk about why. I think I'm also proud. Like, I'm always impressed by. Do you know the stories of the Menils? This incredible collecting couple from Houston, probably the most important in the 20th century. And when you dig deep into their story, they did so much. And I'm not comparing them to us because, I wish, but they did so much for social justice at all times, and even in the smallest of ways,
in quiet ways,
and representation and support. That if one can do that, even in, again, being able to commission a fabric from someone that you can have an impact for, that's kind of great.
Well, you two are doing a lot of work and various things within the design sector. Is there something in particular that you want to do, or a project you want to participate in or want to achieve?
I think we are both really interested in, we want to do everything.
Everything.
I think we're both really interested in hospitality, because hospitality seems to inform kind of a broader taste today. People are making choices and creating stories for themselves based on stays at hotels and meals at restaurants. And so I think we're super interested in being part of the conversation, because that's a way of, I think, getting your story out bigger and broader.
I think that's in terms of what we do in the design and Argo interiors, like doing that hospitality and continue getting great clients will be great. In the gallery, there's nothing that makes us happier than our designers, the designers we work with, starting to get traction and being collected. And, like when museums buy a piece from us, from a young designer that has never been collected, and certainly by an institution, like this year in San Francisco, SF MoMA bought a piece from this Brazilian designer we're working with. It's so rewarding to us.
And the Denver Art Museum.
And the Denver Art Museum. And
first solo exhibition of this young Brazilian designer that we've been working with for a number of years. First U.S. exhibition, first true solo exhibition.
2 museums purchased from him. And it brings such joy to us.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So if we can continue, I feel, and I used that word before, but if we can continue amplifying the stories of people we admire, it makes us so happy.
I completely get that, because that's why this show was developed, is to give the voices to the people behind the design industry, because people see that the finished product, they see the pretty pictures, they see, but they don't get to know the designers,
right.
What makes them tick, who they are, what their personality is. So I completely get that.
And I think, spaces like this are very important for conversation, like you say, to make it more human and closer. So I think if we can continue just treading and growing and getting more projects and more museums to look at what we do.
But as they say, from your mouth.
Yes, exactly.
So what's next for the both of you, Ago and the gallery?
We have a very big fall. We were invited for the first time to Frieze Masters in London, which is a very important fair of historical works. You have to show things that are either created before the year 2000 or the artist designer needs to have been born before 1950. And we're doing our first Mexican historical exhibition, which we're super excited about. Then we go to Paris to work with India Madhavi, the amazing designer. We're showing lamps by these 2 young ladies that live in Spain. I call her Mexican Inés and Spanish Inés. Kawani is the name of the studio, so we're doing that. We're installing a couple homes at the end of the year. So
that's also have a big project with a big restaurant in London called Sketch, that we're doing an installation of a number of design works from the gallery in London,
including Mestis. So that's super exciting. What else are we doing? We were looking at the calendar the other day, and I'm like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? I'm looking forward to May 26th, but I said the same thing this year. And May 25 came around and nothing stopped. So what else are we excited about? We have an exhibition here in Mexico in the fall.
A very exciting
exhibition with a French designer living in Mexico for many, many years. And it's almost like an anti-war statement that we're super excited about.
Oh, wow. Well, finally, how do you define success at this point in your careers?
I really think about it by waking up in the morning and feeling excited and energized and delighted to work. That for me feels like that's what success looks like, is waking up and being able to bring the day in and be excited about it and know that the work that we're doing impacts positively lots of different people and friends and clients all the way across.
And for me, success is the relationships we're building. I went yesterday all day to Hermosillo, which is a city in the north. And I spent all day in the house of the daughter of the only author of tapestries made in Mexico in the 60s and 70s. And I spent maybe 8 hours listening to her story, her parents' story, her grandparents' story. They were all incredible creatives.
Wow. And
my heart got filled with joy for her openness and her allowing me to her space. And we're going to show the tapestries in London. And it was so profound because, they're human stories. When she was talking about her dad making tapestries, we really started talking about his personal life and her personal life and how he affected her. And it all becomes deeply personal. And that's success for me, when someone opens up their doors.
The human connection.
Correct.
Absolutely.
We also need to make money.
Well, it does help. We have to eat sometimes. Yeah. Well, Rodman, Rudy, is there anything else you'd like to share and tell our audience today about either of you, Ago or the gallery?
Our book.
There's the book.
Love How You Live, Adventures in Interior Design. And we feature a lot of people we work with, which was really exciting.
I'd like other people to work with too. So it's been so great to have this afternoon together. Thanks so much, Chris.
Is there a project or a book number 2?
There is.
He really wants to do it. I'm pacing.
Our publisher has said to me a number of times, "You're the book of the year." If anyone else is publishing listening to this with Fine Monticelli and they've heard the same thing, then we all just know that's what they tell everybody. But they would like us to do another book, and it would be a dream. It would be a dream to start on our second book with them.
Fantastic. Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure and an honor to have you on our show today, and it's a delight to actually meet you personally.
Well, we await you in Mexico City.
Thank you. Such a treat.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tell me when the apartment's open, and I'll be down.
Great. Thank you.
You take care, and much continued success to you both and all that your endeavors tend to take you.
Thanks
you very much.
Such a treat.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Rodman and Rudy remind us that great design is more than what we see. It's what we feel, what we challenge, and what we dare to reimagine. To explore their world further, visit agoprojects.com and follow their journey on Instagram. And don't forget, check out their book. Until next time, stay inspired, stay curious, and remember, design isn't just what surrounds us, it's what shapes us. This has been Beyond the Design.
Hi, you're listening to a Pod for Good Media Network podcast. We are a network that provides podcasting production services and a supportive community in which podcasters can thrive. If you're a podcaster local in the Tulsa area, we would love to have your show on the network. If you are interested in starting one, we would love to help you get started. Find us online at podforgoodmedia.com and fill out our Pod With Us form. Happy podcasting.